Murray Leinster and Internet. A Logic Named Joe. A Logic Named Joe. Author: Murray Leinster. Country: United States. Language: English. Genre: science fiction short story. Published in Astounding Science Fiction. Publication date: March 1946. A Logic Named Joe is a science fiction short story by Murray Leinster that was first published in the March 1946 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. The story actually appeared under Leinster's real name, Will F. Jenkins, since that issue of Astounding also included a story under the Leinster pseudonym called Adapter. The story is particularly noteworthy as a prediction of massively networked personal computers and their drawbacks, written at a time when computing was in its infancy. Murray Leinster. Murray Leinster, June 16, 1896 – June 8, 1975, was a nom de plume of William Fitzgerald Jenkins, an award-winning American writer of science fiction and alternate history. He wrote and published more than 1,500 short stories and articles, 14 movie scripts, and hundreds of radio scripts and television plays. Leinster was born in Norfolk, Virginia, the son of George B. Jenkins and Mary L. Jenkins. His father was an accountant. Although both parents were born in Virginia, the family lived in Manhattan in 1910, according to the 1910 federal census. He began his career as a freelance writer before World War I. He was 2 months short of his 20th birthday when his first story, The Foreigner, appeared in the May 1916 issue of H. L. Mencken's literary magazine, The Smart Set. Over the next 3 years, Leinster published 10 more stories in the magazine. During and after World War I, he began appearing in pulp magazines like Argosy, Snappy Stories, and Breezy Stories. He continued to appear regularly in Argosy into the 1950s. When the pulp magazines began to diversify into particular genres in the 1920s, Leinster followed suit, selling jungle stories to danger trails, westerns to western cowboy stories, detective stories to black mask and mystery stories, horror stories to weird tales, and even romance stories to Love Story magazine under the pen name Louisa Carter Lee. Leinster's first science fiction story, The Runaway Skyscraper, appeared in the February 22, 1919 issue of Argosy, and was reprinted in the June 1926 issue of Hugo Gernsback's first science fiction magazine, Amazing Stories. In the 1930s, he published several science fiction stories and serials in Amazing and Astounding Stories. The first issue of Astounding included his story, Tanks. He continued to appear frequently in other genre pulp such as Detective Fiction Weekly and Smashing Western, as well as Collier's Weekly beginning in 1936 and Esquire starting in 1939. Leinster is credited with the invention of parallel universe stories. 4 years before Jack Williamson's The Legion of Time came out, Leinster published his Sidewise in Time in the June 1934 issue of Astounding. Leinster's vision of extraordinary oscillations in time, Sidewise in Time, had a long-term impact on other authors, for example Isaac Asimov's Living Space, The Red Queen's Race, and The End of Eternity. Leinster's 1945 novella, First Contact, is also credited as one of the first, if not the first, instances of a universal translator in science fiction. Leinster was one of the few science fiction writers from the 1930s to survive in the John W. Campbell era of high writing standards, publishing over 3 dozen stories in Astounding and Analog under Campbell's editorship. The last story by Leinster in Analog was Quarantine World in the November 1966 issue, 36 years after his appearance in the premiere January 1930 issue. Murray Leinster's 1946 short story, A Logic Named Joe, contains one of the first descriptions of a computer, called a logic in fiction. In the story, Leinster was decades ahead of his time in imagining the Internet. He envisioned logics in every home, linked through a distributed system of servers called tanks, to provide communications, entertainment, data access, and commerce. One character says that logics are civilization. After World War II, When both his name and the pulps had achieved a wider acceptance, he would use either William Fitzgerald, Fitzgerald Jenkins, or Will F. Jenkins as names on stories when Leinster had already sold a piece to a particular issue. Leinster continued publishing in the 1950s and 1960s, appearing in Galaxy magazine and the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, as well as the Saturday Evening Post. He won a Hugo Award for his 1956 story, Exploration Team. Leinster ended his writing career writing novelizations of episodes of the science fiction series Men into Space, The Time Tunnel, and Land of the Giants. Personal life. During World War I, Leinster served with the Committee of Public Information and the United States Army, 1917-1918. In 1921, he married Mary Mandola, who was born in New York to Italian parents. The two had 4 daughters. During World War II, he served in the Office of War Information. Legal action against Paramount Pictures. In 2000, Leinster's heir sued Paramount Pictures over the film Star Trek: First Contact, claiming that as the owners of the rights to Leinster's 1945 short story, First Contact, it infringed their trademark in the term. The U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia granted Paramount's motion for summary judgment and dismissed the suit. 4-5. The court found that regardless of whether Leinster's story first coined the phrase, it had since become a generic and therefore unprotectable term that described the genre of science fiction in which humans first encounter alien species. Even if the title was instead descriptive, a category of terms higher than generic that may be protectable, there was no evidence that the title had the required association in the public's mind, known as secondary meaning, such that its use would normally be understood as referring to Leinster's story. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the lower court's dismissal without comment. Other endeavors. Leinster was also an inventor under his real name of William F. Jenkins, best known for the front projection process used in special effects. Murray Leinster and Internet. Powered by tts-api.com. Please leave a comment. Thank you.